And this week has been very eventful with various state visits. Hello and welcome to this week's segment here on Africanews. I'm Amelia Martha Nakitimbo, and Africa's image as a land of opportunities continues to be reaffirmed, and this is increasingly drawing global attention to the continent and facilitating inclusion. And that means we should pay a lot of attention to the strategies that African heads of state have or are putting in place in order to get the most out of international deals and agreements. Because if the African Union does not firmly front the Agenda 2063 and clearly define its implementation plan, then African nations will be left in a position of aiding the big players such as China, the US, and now the UK and the European Union bloc to fulfill their own agendas. But at what cost, especially in the long run? That's a question I will leave you to ponder on. And if we can look at some of the news that has been happening on the continent, British Prime Minister Theresa May made her maiden visit to Africa since assuming office. She has visited South Africa and will be going to Nigeria and Kenya, three big regional economies. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa is hoping for renewal of trust of investors. Now, given a backdrop of a fast approaching Brexit deadline of March 2019 and immense pressure back home to crack post-Brexit deals, Theresa May is now talking about creating new customers for British exporters on the African continent. Take a listen.
That is why I want to create a new partnership between the UK and our friends in Africa, one built around our shared prosperity and shared security. I want to see strong African economies that British businesses can do business with in a free and fair fashion, whether through creating new customers for British exporters or opportunities for British investors. Our integrated global economy means healthy African economies are good news for British people as well as for African people. That's why I'm delighted that we will today confirm plans to carry over the European Union's Economic Partnership Agreement with the Southern African Customs Union and Mozambique, once the EU's deal no longer applies to the UK.
Now from here, May will be heading to Kenya, where President Uhuru Kenyatta has just concluded discussions with US President Donald Trump in Washington. The US has promised to help Kenya with the terrorism problem, and for the other development project, Trump characteristically used superlatives without pointing to anything specific. Take a listen.
More importantly, we're here to pursue and to strengthen our trade and investment ties, which are already very strong. We have a good number of American companies in Kenya, and we want to see how we can strengthen that going forward for the mutual benefit of our two countries.
Very much for being here. It's a great honor. We have a tremendous relationship with Kenya. We have terrorism, a lot of trade, getting bigger and bigger all the time. We're working on a major infrastructure project, a massive roadway that will be record-setting in many ways.
And yet, China is working round the clock to win over African countries, especially since there is a trade war fueled by the Trump administration. With the Belt and Road Vision, China is working on several infrastructural projects that directly impact the common man here in Africa. And a good number of African heads of state and experts are preparing to head to China next week for the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit, FOCAF. Now, with the Will Africa take advantage of the global attention and swim with the big fish? Tell me what you think. And that concludes this week's business segment with me, Amelia Martha Nakitimbo. Back to you, Hanan and Jerry.